And I will start, and I will give you some insights to the specificities of Austrian shrinking regions. It's a little bit different, as Gabriel said before, as I'm not reporting on a ESPON project. It's rather a national project that was driven out. So I want to start with a brief information on the situation in Austria generally. Then I want to give an insight into the project strategies for regions with population decline. And then I will round off the presentation. Yeah, for the intro, the situation in Austria, I will show you some maps from the Euroc Atlas. That's a free atlas. You can, you see the website here where you can have a look at it. And here in the first map, you will see the following. You here will see the population change from 2011 to 2021 in Austria. You see the spatial reference unit are NUTS free, it's political districts in Austria. And please be careful because the color code is a little bit different than to many other ESPON maps. We here have the color code says red are regions with growth and blue are regions with decline. And when you have a look at this map of Austria, you see the red zones around the larger cities, urban agglomerations, the region around Vienna. You will see here there is a very, very strong growth pole between Vienna and Bratislava. And then you will see this growth axis around east-west growth axis from Vorarlberg over Tyrol, Salzburg, Upper Austria, Lower Austria to Vienna. And you have this blue part in the center of Austria, that we have some kind of an inner periphery where we have to face a population decline. And in the north, it's also something, a zone with, let's say, traditional decline. And this was the looking back, and now we want to look forward. Here you see the regional forecast for the predicted population change until 2030 in percent. Here you also have the spatial reference are forecast regions. Color code is the same. Red is growth, blue is decline. And it's a little bit different from the layout because you see the reference base is the permanent settlement area. That's why you see the valleys, and the mountains are more or less where you cannot settle, it's white, and in the valleys you see the forecasted numbers. And it's more or less the same when we look back or when we look forward. We have those growth poles in the urban areas, but also quite strong growth in the mountain valleys of Tyrol, of Vorarlberg, and in the east, and we see decline in the south. Generally, at national level, Austria will be growing. We will reach the 9 million now in this year. And so it's quite a different situation than to, for example, Croatia, also Hungary, as was stated today. There is just one more map, two more maps, and one is trying to give an insight to the cross-regional product. Because as we heard today, there is analysis going on how much economic development confers with population decline or not. And in this map, you see the cross-regional product per inhabitant from the year 2018 in current prices. It's a reference compared to the EU 28. EU 28 will, is the index 100, and the color code says that red and light green regions are below, are more than 100, are more than the EU 28 comparison, and the dark green are under this index of EU 28. And so here you see that mainly the western parts show a very strong cross-regional product. Urban regions around the big cities, not that strong in the eastern regions, where we have strong predicted growth of population. And you also have not that bad development in the south and in the inner peripheries. As we heard, there are very different patterns of development, and it does not always go hand in hand, weak economic development and population decline. You have to have a more detailed look. What you can say is that that Austria is growing mainly because of immigration from abroad. Here you see the balance of migration from 2016 to 2019 per 1,000 inhabitants. You again have the spatial reference of political districts. Color code again says red is a positive balance and blue is a negative balance. And here you see that we have very few political districts in Austria where we have a negative migration balance. We can say that we have significant immigration to Austria from other parts of the EU, from outside EU. The strongest developments are in Vienna region, the east-west axis, urban regions, but we also have a lot of rural regions and regions with population decline that also show positive migration balance. And I think that's an important point to say. I will now jump in, give a short insight into the project strategy for regions with population decline. It was a project implemented at the Austrian Conference on Spatial Planning. Lead partners were the Federal Chancellery and the Ministry for Rural Development and also the Land Tirol. And a working group was accompanying the work, and there were some experts doing analysis and the content-related work. Rosener and Partner was one of them, but there were also experts from the Federal Institute of Agricultural Economics, Rural and Mountain Research. I also saw Thomas Dax, one of these experts, today in the meeting. And we also had on board Clavis Communications Consulting that were consulting us with a lot of things related to communication. I want to go deeper into that, and you see the website where you can have a look at the information. So what were the main objectives of the project? We wanted to raise awareness for developments and facts concerning population decline, but we also wanted to pay special attention to communication, language, and emotions. We wanted to develop, let's say, parts of a communication plan and new frames. And we wanted to discuss the outcomes in pilot regions. Yeah, and I really want to stress out that the aim of the project was to give special attention to language, to communication, and the concept of frames or the concept of framing. We dived into this concept, let's say important authors, for example, Lakoff at Eltera, but also Kahneman and Tversky. It is closely linked to behavioral economics. And we meant that, or the authors say that the framing effect means that the formulations of a message influences the behavior and of the recipient, or the way how the recipient receives a message. And I want to deep into that a little bit and give you some examples. In this project, we tried to point out frames or narratives often used for regions with population decline. You often read about dying regions, sterbende Regionen in German, aging regions, remote or peripheral regions, or left behind or lagging behind regions. And now I want to ask you, what images do you get in your mind when you hear these frames or these narratives? How do you imagine a dying region? It must be something gray, death, trees, nothing that lives, something very negative. So do you want to live in such a region? Do you want to invest in such a region? How would you feel as a resident of such a dying region? And this is something what we tried to work out. But we did not only work with language and narratives, we also conducted a deep analysis, and we derived some key messages from this analysis. I just want to turn or want to name some of those key messages. Firstly, we said that we have to learn how to live with population decline. We heard that today. We have to adapt. We have to draw a picture of how to overcome this picture of overlasting growth, degrowth, qualitative growth. We should turn the perspective for 180 degrees. Instead of the prevention of out-migration or emigration, we should support immigration and return migration. Next point is also very important. We heard something of that today too. Regional centers are stabilizers. We should not play them off against the other municipalities. This negative this negative think that one municipality is working against another one. They should join forces. And we found out that soft factors, respectively quality of life factors, are particularly important. We should reorganize the services of general interest in an innovative way. And this is something very important for Austria. I don't know if it's also important to other regions, but tourism is no longer a panacea for population decline. We long thought that if in a region there is tourism, this will be the medicine for everything. But that's not longer the case. You then will see some more key messages, but I don't want to deep into them now. And I now want to show you some of those frames we worked out and we discussed in the pilot regions. I just want to show you the first one or the second one. One of those frames was that we said, let's roll up our sleeves. We have had enough of bad moods. We achieve a lot and we can be proud of what we have achieved in our region. We are much more than subsidy recipients. There's been enough complaining. Let's go on with this. Let's go ahead, even if some things will change. And another frame said that we can change successfully. For generations, adaptability has been our great strength. We have defied the weather in high alpine regions and built up global companies in remote areas. This ability to change will continue to be our trump card in the future. And even if we become fewer, we reorganize ourselves. We are taking our future into our own hands. So these are just short insights in what we developed there and discussed with the people in the pilot regions. And we wanted to make aware our partners about the significance of language. We want to turn the perspective from this prevailing image of the fight against something to trigger both positive dynamics and action for something. This is also something Victor said today, that we have to change the paradigm and also take into account psychological aspects. To sum up now, it's my summary here. It was exciting and very interesting for us to deep into the concept of emotions and narratives in that context. We haven't done that so far. And we wanted to tackle both facts and figures and a deepened analysis, as well as emotions and frames. We use this approach to open up perspectives and trigger the change of mindsets. For example, we pointed out immigration also takes place in regions with declining population. It's not in the minds of those people. It's not the regions that are dying, it's the people getting older. And we wanted to start thinking more about qualitative growth than quantitative growth. And we heard a lot of this today, quality of life aspects, green infrastructure, also in context with climate change. I have to say it was an experimental project to approach this topic in a different way. And it also became clear that the individual regions in a general or a global context have little room for maneuver and on many issues. For example, they cannot change the jurisdiction of migration. But regions do have room for maneuver, and it's often linked to soft issues like openness, welcome culture, quality of life, tackling advantages despite the focus of out-migration. Yeah, it was something rather experimental and a little bit different than presented today. And thank you very much for your thank you very much for listening. And here you have the references where you can find the outcomes and presentations. Just trying to get out of the sharing of the screen. Thank you very much.